Thank you very much, Michele. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this press conference on a very important subject, that of corruption. Corruption erodes trust in public institutions and democracy. It undermines our internal market, it hampers foreign investment, it costs taxpayers millions, and in many cases it's also a tool for organized crime networks to wash their money. There are estimations that corruption costs in the European Union is no less than 120 billion euros each year. And that is the equivalent of an EU annual budget. So it's a lot of money we're talking about. And that is why, all these reasons, why the Commission adopts today the first EU anti-corruption report. It gives a frank assessment on how each member state tackles corruption, how existing laws and policies work in practice, and we suggest also how each member state can step up their work against corruption. The report shows clearly that the level of corruption varies from member state to member state, but it also shows that it affects all member states. There are no corruption-free zones in Europe. European citizens are fully aware and very concerned about this. The results of the 2 Eurobarometer surveys, also published today, that Michele referred to, show that a vast majority, 76% of Europeans, think that corruption is widespread in their country. More than half of the Europeans think that the level of corruption in their country has increased over the past years. And 1 in 12 Europeans have experienced or witnessed corruptions in the last year. 4 out of 10 European companies consider corruption to be an obstacle for doing business in the EU. And these economic effects are even more worrying in times of economic and financial crisis. So in order to pull out Europe of the crisis, to put our economies in order, we need, of course, to maximize the legal economy. And one way of doing this is to attack corruption effectively. And the report will hopefully be a useful tool for all stakeholders to take national corruption policies forward. Many member states have, of course, put stronger focus on fighting corruption in recent years. New legislation has been adopted, new institutions have been set up, and there are national anti-corruption strategies in many countries. And we take stock of these developments, the progress made, and also point to a number of good practices that others can learn from. But at the same time, the report also shows that the results are not sufficient. We are not doing enough. And this is true for all member states. Existing laws and policies are not enforced enough, and the firm political commitment to really root out corruption still seems to be missing. So in the report, we therefore call for improvements in a number of different areas. In some member states, vulnerability to corruption in public procurement processes is the main problem. In others, the main problems are related to political party financing. It's not transparent enough. Widespread corruption at the local authorities is another example. Or we also show that many healthcare patients have to pay under the table to receive proper care. And for each of these areas, the report suggests solutions based on a careful assessment on each member state. They include, for instance, better accountability and integrity standards, control mechanisms in public authorities, dealing with conflict of interest by officials, how to address corruption at local level in state-owned companies, the effectiveness of courts, police, protection mechanisms for whistleblowers, limiting risks of bribery in foreign countries, making lobbying more transparent, and developing innovative e-tools to enhance transparency. We also look particularly at the corruption in public procurement. 1/5 of EU's GDP is spent every year in public procurement of goods and services, so it is essential to our economy. But there is also large evidence that this is an area vulnerable to corruption. Studies suggest that up to a quarter of the value of public contracts in EU member states may be lost in corrupt practices. And this, of course, is very damaging to the citizens. According to the Eurobarometer survey today, 1/3 of companies that participated in public tenders say that corruption prevented them winning a contract. So we therefore suggest a number of more dissuasive sanctions and also enhancing transparency. So to conclude, this report is a first step. It's the first time we have a complete overview of the situation in all member states and also set out suggestions on how to move forward. We We will now, of course, engage in a dialogue with Member States, national parliaments, European Parliament, on how to follow up on these suggestions. And in 2 years' time, there will be a new anti-corruption report that will take stock on where we are and how far we moved. Of course, it takes much more than a report to eradicate corruption. But as we are finding our way out of the economic crisis, this can be a tool. We cannot afford to drag our feet. We hope that this will start a very constructive process that will spur the political will and the necessary commitments at all levels to address corruption, because the price of not acting is simply too high. Thank you very much.